If you ask most gamers what their favorite classic Mega Man game is, they'll likely say 2. If you ask a classic Mega Man fan what their favorite is, 4, 7, and 9 come up a lot. But that's not my answer. My favorite Mega Man game is Mega Man 4, with Roman numerals. I'm talking about the Game Boy version of Mega Man 4, also known as Mega Man World 4. You might be thinking, a Game Boy version of an NES game? Wouldn't that be worse? And in some ways, you're right. But World 4 does a lot right to set itself apart from the NES games. And in my opinion, it even exceeds them in many ways. Let's take a look at Mega Man World 4. For the first 4 Game Boy Mega Man games, the developers combined 2 Mega Man games together for the Robot Masters. For example, Mega Man Dr. Wily's Revenge featured Robot Masters from both Mega Man 1 and Mega Man 2. World 4 features Robot Masters from Mega Man 4 NES and Mega Man 5 NES. Because of this, we have what I consider this game's biggest flaw. It's not as original as the NES games. While all of the levels in this game have different layouts than their NES counterparts, most stages are aesthetically similar to their home console versions, and a lot of the music is ported over. And since it's the Game Boy, there's far less variety of colors, even with the Super Game Boy. Granted, it still looks and sounds good because, well, it's Mega Man. It's just that if you want an entire game with new ideas, you won't find that here. But that's not really the main appeal of Mega Man World 4. Instead, we have to look at the game design. Mega Man World 4 was the first Mega Man game ever to have a shop. When you beat enemies, you might still get traditional pickups, but you might also find P-chips. You can use P-chips between stages to buy items. This includes a permanent upgrade in the energy balancer, a super tank that refills all health and weapon energy that also can't be found in stages, the new W tank that can refill weapon energy, and some older traditional items. The shop itself gives the players more resources to beat the game with, and it means that after a game over, the player will still have made progress thanks to the currency they collect. But the bigger boon of the shop is how it improves the level design. You can find P-chips from enemies, yes, but you can also find them scattered around the levels. When you play Mega Man and see another route for a health pickup, it might not always be worth it. You might already have full health. But there's never a reason to not have more currency. Thanks to the balanced pricing, there's always going to be something in the shop to buy. So by placing P-chips around the levels, the designers are able to create a lot more optional challenges since there's better incentives. This type of design would be used in later Mega Man games like 7 and 9, and it all started here. But while the shop is the main new feature, the game still has many cool design choices. First, something small. When you launch a full charge shot, you get pushed back slightly. This isn't much, but it does offer a tangible drawback to using the charge shot that changes a few more things than you'd think. Next, something also technically small. The game introduces mini E-tanks. If you collect 4 of these, you get a full E-tank. This follows the same principle as the in-level P-chips. It offers another incentive to do optional challenges in levels. It's not as inherently valuable as an E-tank, so the challenges with them can be easier. And it gives the shop another item. Do you save up to buy a full E-tank? Or do you buy mini ones to complete your already started set? It's a nice addition that I'm surprised didn't return outside of the Game Boy games. And finally, there are a few fully original levels and bosses in this game. Like the other Mega Man World games, Wily's Castle is completely new with its own design and music. This game also puts a pretty substantial amount of effort into its graphical presentation. There's a few cutscenes, and one of them I'd argue is a lot cooler than anything from the NES games. And there's a Mega Man Killer. Mega Man Killers are bosses exclusively made for each Game Boy game. They have their own cool designs and even give out a completely unique special weapon. This game has Blade, who's less about evil and more about wanting to pick a good fight. He has a surprising presence in this game, and appears more throughout than most Mega Man characters. He's a cool addition. So, the new stuff is pretty cool, but surprisingly, what Mega Man World 4 might do best is instead remix old ideas. There aren't as many new ideas, sure, but in exchange for that, you get an insane amount of polish that wasn't in the original NES versions. For example, most special weapons in here return from previous games. That means the designers were able to rework a few of them to be better. Take Power Stone. On the Game Boy's smaller screen, there's a far greater chance the stones will actually hit something. The weapon is inherently better, and there's even a spot where it saved me just in the nick of time so I could beat a level. Then there's Ring Boomerang. What was originally a fairly standard looping projectile now has an incredible secondary function. It can pull items back to you. This leads to you using it far more often, and also adds to the level design. Those aren't the only changes to the special weapons, but it's nice to have better versions. When I go back to play the originals, I usually miss what this game adds to them. Beat's also in this game, and he's improved in a really surprising way. In Mega Man 5, you have to play all 8 levels to get Beat. This means unless you game over, you can only use him in the castle stages. In Mega Man World 4, there's 2 sets of 4 Robot Masters. You can only choose from the Mega Man 4 set at the start, and after you beat them, you can do the Mega Man 5 set. This does mean that you have less ways to replay the game, but it does come with advantages, like the aforementioned Beat. To get Beat, you only need to find the letters in the first 4 stages. That means for the second set of Robot Masters, you have access to Beat. This lets you use him a lot more than the NES games. The split structure of the Robot Master sets also means that the second set of stages can have sections designed for things like Rush and the secondary uses of the special weapons. So all of that is pretty great, but none of it is the best part of Mega Man World 4. The best part of Mega Man World 4 is the level design. A lot of Mega Man games have a few bad levels in them. It is hard to make every single level in a game good. Mega Man World 4 has one level that's too long, but none of them are bad. Again, even though the levels look similar to their home console versions, the layouts are completely different. I mentioned how the P-chips and the mini E-tanks allow for more optional challenges. Perhaps more than any classic Mega Man game until 7, this game has a plethora of alternate routes for goodies. There's so many layers to each of the levels to add more for the player to do. It's often not just a straight charge forward, and even when it is, there's a lot of clever design along the way. I remember this part in Brightman's stage with an extra life. Once I got to it, I didn't know how to go forward. After all, the head wouldn't be able to clear the top of the platform. But after some thinking, I realized I could take the head under the platform. And the extra life was probably there for people who got stuck and tried to jump off beforehand. There's also things like the 2 completely separate second halves for Crystal Man stage, less mini-bosses in Ring Man stage, the Ring Boomerang items in Charge Man stage, and arguably the game's crowning achievement, Napalm Man stage. This stage is the most reworked of all the returning levels, and it's a treat. It's a military bunker with a ton of branching paths to explore, a unique use for Rain Flush, smart enemy placement that somehow does the bottomless pit enemies right, and even a new use for a gimmick that the NES version didn't have. This stage is so good that the YouTube channel Designing For made an entire video about how the Game Boy version of this level is so much better than the NES version. Most levels don't go as far as Napalm Man stage, but they're all really fun and reach a high quality standard. Most of the time. I'm not going to pretend like everything's perfect. Crystal Man stage is still good, but it does still have a few cheap moments. There's also probably a few design choices in other levels here and there that are a little off. But I can confidently say that this game has some of, if not the, best level design of the entire classic series. And the game is fun from start to finish. Spoilers for the endgame are ahead. You can use the time code on screen to skip this section. This game's endgame is pretty rad. You raid a missile bunker and fight against Blade, grabbing the powerful Blade Cracker when you beat him. The escape sequence that follows has missiles in all directions, and that helps teach you what the Blade Cracker can do. And after all of that, you go into space! The raid on the exterior is fairly difficult your first time through, with a set of metal tanks that require you to jump on the tips of their turrets. And it ends with a super cool fortress boss that can use your own special weapons. The final interior level of the castle rocks too. It brings together different enemies from the game, and the design stays fair. It's a blast to get through, and at the end, you get the first ever Robot Master refights in the Game Boy series. Here's a fun fact. The robots each get new arenas in the refights. That means this game is more polished in the refights than Mega Man 5. Come to think of it, the shop also means that it ends up contributing more to the series than 5. Okay, I'll stop digging on Mega Man 5. After the refights, you get a cool bit of fan service. The final boss of the first Game Boy game was a giant Dr. Wily head. In a surprising twist, that head is back, and now it has a giant body. Mega Man World 4 is the last Game Boy game to bring over Robot Masters from the NES games. So in a way, bringing back the first Game Boy final boss with an entirely new fight feels like an end to an era. You take the robot down across 2 phases, with that awesome music blaring as you fight. Wily gets in his saucer after, which leads to the 3rd phase. What's one of the best ways to hit the saucer above you? With your multi-directional Blade Cracker. So a bit later, and you're done. Mega Man tries to escape the space station and hits a dead end. But Blade appears. Having a newfound respect for Mega Man after their fight, He defies his programming and blows himself up to give Mega Man an escape route out of the fortress, ending Mega Man World 4. I'm not going to pretend that Blade's sacrifice is profound storytelling. He had no dialogue before this, and nothing really builds up to it. But this, in conjunction with the previous cutscenes, do illustrate that the team wanted to make this game's presentation special. And seeing Mega Man care so much about an enemy is a great character moment. In any case, it's a great end to a great game. Mega Man World 4 might not have the most new ideas, but it certainly makes up for it in what new things it does bring, and its general level of quality. The addition of the shop and its new collectibles help add a lot to the levels. The rebalance of older mechanics makes them more fun, the few new levels and bosses are really enjoyable, and most importantly, the level design is insanely good, making the game a blast the entire way through. If you haven't played Mega Man World 4 before, then I highly recommend giving it a try. And if you have, we'll play it again. This game rocks!